So today we will be looking at TestNG. So we already have learned a unit testing framework called JUnit. So I only taught JUnit 3 inside this version. So the JUnit has two versions, JUnit 3 and JUnit 4. JUnit was created by a guy called Kent Beck. Actually, he is a main architect of JUnit, and he also worked on design patterns. So he created actually this XUnit framework, so which became like the de facto standard for many languages. So from which actually it was first created for SUnit, Smalltalk unit, then it became for Java JUnit, and for C++ it became CPP unit, and for PHP it is PHP unit, and for .NET or C# it is NUnit, and for there are other kinds of, and Ruby it's RSpec, or there is another kind of Ruby unit too, Ruby that is called test unit. In Ruby there is a test unit too. This is also from XUnit framework. So all are same. So there is a 3 version and there is a 4 version. So XUnit version has two versions in market. In market means 4 didn't replace version 4 did not replace version 3. Why? Because version 3, because both are completely different, and still people use 3 version a lot, because people use, and version 3 is very simple and basic, so it is flexible. So flexibility is there a lot. Okay, means doesn't mean that JUnit 4 is bad, but still people uses 3, so that's why 3 didn't go away. So it's same for all: JUnit, SUnit, PHP unit, Perl unit, NUnit, RSpec, test unit, I don't know, whatever the language it is. So unit testing is same. So unit testing has 3 versions. So until now we learned JUnit 3. So JUnit 3, actually you can go through my recording if you missed that JUnit 3. So JUnit 3 tells that every method should start with a test, and if you want to use, for example, if you want to do something like data setup or anything, you should use setup method, and if you want to clean up something after this one, you should use tear down method. And they created a test case class, so every class should extend this one, right? Should extend this one. And they created a test suite object class so that you can create suites. So actually this is the basic architecture of JUnit 3. But is this enough? Because in today's world everything is unit testing. If you see it or not, means when I say everything is unit testing, I really don't mean that you are doing unit testing. Everything is depended on unit test frameworks now, because Agile says integrations are more important, and we need like one code, one knowledge. So every test is in Java. For example, if our company is doing development in Java, everything is in Java. Unit testing is in Java. Performance testing is in Java. For example, unit test JUnit, performance test JUnit perf or JMeter, and functional test it is Selenium, and so everything. So it's not only this one, continuously everything will be in Java. So if you take Ruby, everything will be in Ruby. If you take Python, everything will be in Python. If you take C#, everything will be in C#. So we want a similar based framework. So everything comes from unit test frameworks. So when unit test frameworks need to do lot, so this simple 5 elements can do everything? No, I don't think so. So the simple 5 elements are not enough. So we need more stuff from unit test frameworks. Okay. Remember, the advantage of JUnit 3 is it's simple. it's very low in functionality, so it is very flexible. Got it? So you have to write the code to make it how you want it to run, but there is no like inbuilt functionality it is given other than this kind of stuff, other than this 5 or 6 elements. There is no inbuilt stuff, you have to write for that. But remember, nowadays testers are using unit test frameworks a lot, so testers want some stuff already built. Means we don't like much coding in Java, where we are not developers unless we are doing test driven development, where we want to spend time on more writing code. We want some configurations and stuff. Okay, so JUnit gave to the testing world. JUnit said that everything is a test, so you can do that by extending test case. Okay, so JUnit created a nice framework which later everyone is using, like Selenium is using, for example, even Watir and other web drivers are using. So everyone is using them. Not only that, HTTP, XML and DB. So every testing is using unit testing to become like Selenium functional test, but it takes the test definition from JUnit. Similarly, there are flaws in some JUnit. So TestNG thought that it could give something to the testing world. So what it could give? What is the flexibility, or what are the advantages TestNG can give over JUnit? And another thing, when you are working in Java world, there are in any other languages. For example, if you take for PHP, .NET or anything, you can say NUnit, CPP unit, like SUnit. But Java has more flexibilities. Okay, Java, people will ask, do you know either JUnit or TestNG? So both are equally famous and equally popular and equally used frameworks. So it's good to know both in Java. So I know if you know one unit test framework it counts, but it's good to know both in Java, especially because the power TestNG gives you and the wide usage JUnit gives you. So you should be very flexible to adapt to both kind of stuff. For example, tomorrow when you go to a company and they are using Selenium, they can use Selenium with TestNG. They can use Selenium with JUnit. So you should be able to figure out, okay, what is JUnit, okay, what JUnit gives to me, what TestNG gives to me. So you should be able to easily adapt to it. But no other language has this much flexibility. Only Java has. Okay. So let's see what TestNG gives to us. And before that, I want to go through what are the flaws in JUnit 3. Okay, JUnit 3, there is one of the biggest flaw in JUnit 3 is statefulness. What is statefulness? Okay, let me write here. And disadvantages, or I don't want to say disadvantages. Okay, or things not covered in JUnit, because I like JUnit. I don't want to say JUnit is missing something. Okay, but JUnit 4 already fixed them, but still TestNG came before JUnit 4. I want to mention it here. TestNG came before JUnit 4. TestNG came before JUnit 4, but after JUnit 3. Okay, so this way you can understand why JUnit upgraded to JUnit 4. JUnit 4 things from TestNG, you can say this way. TestNG took things from JUnit 3, you can say this way too. Okay, so let's see what we can do. If you see here, there is a unit testing, and I have done so much of unit testing here in the last batch, like the August batch, and let's see. If you see, when I'm doing unit testing, I have to import this JUnit framework dot star, and if you see, test largest extend test case. Okay, and if you see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 test methods. So every test method should run with test. So hard code means method names are hard coded. See, if you want to make something test, you have to start with just this is not an means this is really a hard-coded way. This is, looks like a old-fashioned, and this is not flexible enough, and this is not sophisticated enough for the current kind of testing. So that is not good. And the other thing, when you run this class, for example, if I run this class, it will run these 5 methods. Let's see. See, it ran like 5 methods, 1, 2, 3, 4, and there is one more. This one. This one. So 5 methods. So there is only one class and 5 test methods are there. But JUnit does a JUnit is designed in a way for every method execution. Test object is created. A new test object is created. A new test object is created. So what does this mean? For example, it's like running these 5 methods separately. Like every time this object gets, means a new test object is created and that method runs. So this method cannot be dependent on this method, and this method are not at all related, even though they are both in the same class. For example, this method and this method are both in the same class, but still they are not at all related. So for example, think like tomorrow you are making this Selenium test. For example, you want to make login test method. See, you want to use modularity. For example, tomorrow you want to use modularity. So you want to say login test method, and you want to say search test method. Search will use login, right? So because you want to make modular, you will make a login and then you will make a search method. So if one method needs to use another method, so no, you cannot do that. So because every method executes in a separate object, test object. So this way you cannot have dependencies, you cannot have orders, you cannot have like functionality spread over. You cannot have functionality spread over. Cannot be splitted. Okay. So this is a bad design. I don't say this is a bad design, but JUnit designed is this way for some particular thing, actually not for us, for developers, but for tester this is not helpful, because we want modularity in our test cases. Agree? We want to do modularity when we are creating test frameworks. Remember, I always say that test frameworks, modularity is one of the key thing. Okay. Next thing, so that is a biggest disadvantage for a testers. So that is one thing. So that is called stateful classes. And coming to the constraints, the name should start with a test, and a JUnit test method cannot have parameters and cannot have return type. So they should be always void and they cannot have parameters. So this way it is more restricting. So if you say like a test method, JUnit test method, yeah. So when you take a JUnit test method, it should be always starting with a test keyword, and that is small case, and it should never have parameters and it should never have return type. So this is maybe disadvantage. It's not really disadvantageous, but it is not very flexible enough. For example, if I want to pass parameters, I want to use parameters. So for example, think like tomorrow when you are making in Selenium. See, I am always giving examples in Selenium because so that you can really apply it for real world functionality. So think like you are making login. You would always like to use the functionality like this: string username, string password. So username and password can be passed inputs to this test method, but JUnit 3 doesn't allow it. So you can't do that. Okay. So no parameters. And no return types. Okay. All right. So the next thing, so this is another thing. Every time you need to extend test case class. Extend test case class. So this is not really bad thing, but other thing why I am saying this is, think like you want to extend some other class and you are already forced to extend test case class. So this way you are like restricted, means, but rather than, for example, if you want to do some other advanced stuff tomorrow, you want to extend some other class, maybe, yes, that might be possible, but this won't allow you, because in Java you can only extend one class at a time. I hope you know that. Okay. And the next thing is data driven testing. So for example, if I want to drive my data from somewhere, I have to read a CSV file, text file, or DB file from outside, or I can have to make. So there is really no standard JUnit way of parameterization, right? Only I have to use Java. I have to use only Java functionality, right? I have to be familiar with Java and I have to use Java functionality. This may be good, this may be bad, but it is not really flexible enough. Coming to other kind of stuff is configuration. Remember, in JUnit, the biggest flaw I think in JUnit 3 is everything should be written, not this written in the code, means test case. In the test case, even though what I want data, it's not flexible enough, but code gets built. You don't want to change the code every time to run a test. You can build the code. It should be flexible enough. For example, if I want to say my data is in this file, I have to hard code into the program. I cannot supply it. So configure, there is no way to configure, no way to flexibly no way to set up the configuration. Okay, that is actually what the TestNG gives us. Okay, and the other thing is, for example, I want to test parallel testing. For example, there is a method in Selenium, login method. I want to do performance testing using 5 users. Remember, like load runner, you can tell that I want to do this login scenario for 5 users parallelly. So there is no parallel testing. That is called concurrent testing. No parallel testing. JUnit doesn't give a way for parallel testing, and there is no like how much to initial count and check for performance. There is no way to check the performance. So there are no other ways, and how many threads and safety of the thread, there are no way to find out that. Another thing, dependencies. Programs depend on one another. So we need to test dependencies. So there is no way to test dependencies in JUnit 3. Okay. Next thing is design patterns. When someone writes Java code, they write the code using some patterns. So it's not the code we have to test. If you give an input, it will get an output. I agree. But sometimes you need to test the designs too. So there is no way in JUnit 3 to test a design. You always only test the code. You don't test the design. But you should need frameworks which can test the design too. Okay, so JUnit 3's answer was JUnit 4 for this, but still JUnit 4 doesn't support all of this. I will tell you at the end of this class what actually JUnit 4 gives you and what TestNG gives you. But most of these problems are solved by TestNG. Even before JUnit 4 came, TestNG came and it solved it. Okay. So let's look into TestNG. So the answer for all these problems is TestNG. So how did TestNG solve all this? Let's see. TestNG is nothing but a framework designed to simply a broad range of testing needs, from unit testing to integration testing. When JUnit was created, unit testing was the only thing it was ready to solve. But by the time TestNG came, already unit test grew up into many things. So like integration testing, XML unit, DB unit. So even though all are based from JUnit framework, so there are many things like we can do integration testing, we can do database testing, we can do static files testing, we can do HTTP protocols testing, we can do browser testing even though there are no browsers. So already testing grew up, unit testing grew up into something else. So NUnit is specifically designed to cater all those needs. In TestNG there are three things. In TestNG there are three things. One is called annotations. One is called annotations. The next one is called configuration. And the third one is called running. So in TestNG, try to solve everything by annotations, and it try to made flexible with configuration, and you can run it. So test is not just a test class. Test is not about test class. You can write anything and make it test. So let's see how we will do that. Okay, I will show you an example of this one so we can get that. Yeah. So what are annotations and stuff? So I will create a new package. For example, let's do, yeah. And one more thing, before that I want everyone, do you see this site? Hold on, not this one, not this, yeah, this one. Please download this one. If you use this site and give it to, for example, you can go here and say install new software, and if you give it here, it's TestNG, and you can download this one. So you can create a plugin of TestNG like this. So take this site. If you see, if you see this recording, or I can give this link to you, take the site. And how do you add a plugin to a Eclipse? You have your Eclipse open, go to help, you see install new software, go to install new software, and this is the place where you can type a link. Automatically the software which is available at this site will come. So select this one and next and finish. So then Eclipse will install this plugin on for your Eclipse, and you need to then restart that, then close it and restart it again. Then always how to verify if we have TestNG, go open perspective other, and if you see inside Java there is one, or otherwise do one thing. Let's do one thing. Let me, for example, if you have a class, right click on it, and do you see TestNG here? Create a TestNG class or convert to TestNG. Okay, create a TestNG class means you are creating a new TestNG class. Convert to TestNG means you can convert a JUnit 3 class into TestNG. So if you have any JUnit 3 unit testing, you can easily convert to TestNG using this convert to TestNG. Okay, again all you need to do is like go to TestNG Eclipse plugin, just search for it and you will get this one. Go for this one and copy the site. Okay, installation. See, once you have this one, copy this one and go to help document and install new software and just type it. Okay, this is not the site actually, the one which I mentioned before was the site. So if you see here, go for this one and just go to install new software and type this one and select this one and next finish. Okay, so once you have this one, you will have TestNG. TestNG in Eclipse is not provided by default, so you need to create, you need to add this plugin. Otherwise, you cannot use TestNG functionality very much. Like you can write the classes, but really TestNG plugin gives you nice way to create TestNG files, configurations files, and convert currently existing JUnit 3 classes into TestNG classes. I am creating a new project for this one, TestNG project. Okay, or I will say WBQA project. Okay, all right. And if you see here, I will create a new package. I will say com dot and I will say wbqa dot, let's say, TestNG. Okay, I'm doing for TestNG, so I will use TestNG. Okay, and inside this one I want to create a new class. Let's see. Okay, I want to create this new class, so I am creating a new class. It's now a simple class. I can actually always go and see, right click and go and use this. Do you see, or other, go to other, and if you can go to TestNG, do you see TestNG and TestNG class? But I don't want to do that because it tries to create so many packages and stuff. I don't want to do that. I want to do it for myself. Okay, so let me start recording. So how will I now? So I will create a class. Let's say close this one. I don't want JUnit anymore. I want to say this is test1. Okay, let's say test1. Then import org.testng dot annotations dot star. Remember, this is the important package when we are doing TestNG. What is that? org.testng dot annotations dot star. Where is this package? It is giving me an error. Where is this package? It will, if you downloaded the plugin, it's already there on your Eclipse plugins. So how can I go and find Eclipse plugins? For example, where is your Eclipse downloaded? Go and find, like, see app. Where is that? App or applications, Eclipse, and if you see plugins, and you will have TestNG somewhere. Where is TestNG? Somewhere I should have TestNG, so you have to find it from here. But if you have somewhere TestNG here, do you see anyone? Does anyone see TestNG here? TestNG. Okay, do not worry. Automatically Eclipse, you can go and tell that, see, on this error, do you see add TestNG library? Automatically it will get the library. If you see here, this from C applications Eclipse plugin org.testng. Do you see org.testng? org.test. Do you see this one? Here the folder is, and this is the executable jar. And do you see this library, TestNG library? If you are doing TestNG unit testing, you need to have this jar file attached to your project. So automatically you got this project, right? As Java jars are there, the TestNG jar will come here. So I got this one. Then how will I do testing? Okay, I will say public void my test. Okay, see, I'm not starting with that small test case. Okay, and I can write anything. I don't have to write an assert. For example, I want to write if I want to write an assert, where are all the asserts in TestNG? Do you see TestNG dot assert? All assets will be on the root, this one. So that's why I will keep TestNG dot star here. Okay, alright, and then let's say, like, for example, you can just say system dot out dot println. Okay, and let's say this is my first TestNG test. Okay, but you didn't mention anywhere that how will this become a test. That is by annotations. Annotations are nothing but Java functionality which was introduced in Java 2 actually. So this annotation tells that, okay, this method automatically gets this function. Where is this test functional defined? If you go to testng.jar, and if you go to, do you see testng.jar has JUnit? If you see, because testng is working on JUnit. I hope you got it. Okay, and org.testng.annotation. Do you see all the annotations? There is a test annotation. Where is the test annotation? Do you see? This is a class, but we are using this as an annotation here. Automatically this method become an annotation. So now, how do you run it? Just run this one. Okay. See, if you see here, test total total restaurant 1, failures is 0. And if you will see, passed is my test. That's it. Actually, there is no asset method at all, but it is still passing. See, so there is no need to have an asset method to do testing. Okay, that is TestNG. Okay, all right. Let me do some more testing. Yeah, yeah. All right. If you want to use asserts, import org dot testng dot JUnit. See, there is JUnit inside this test. Hold on, JUnit dot star. Sorry, JUnit dot star. Okay, and you can have asset. Do you see this one? Asset dot asset true. I want to say asset true. Okay, all right, agree. And now I will run this one and see this TestNG, and it will say this is my first TestNG test passed. Okay, this is how you will write. So this is an annotation. So JUnit TestNG is all about annotations. So if you know your annotations well, you can use TestNG very well. Alright, so this is our first TestNG method. But there is a small catch here. When I am running this one, if you see here, when I am running this one, it is running. Do you see this one? Running, and it says some XML file. When I am running this class, why it is telling me that it is running an XML file? Why? I ran a class and it is telling me it is executing an XML file. Why? That is the beauty of TestNG. TestNG, you can write as many classes. TestNG doesn't care. TestNG, write your classes. But doesn't mean that you will run everything in a class or everything in a package. You can create a XML file and tell what you want to run. So this is called configuration. In TestNG, you write your classes and you create a XML file and tell what you want to run actually, and then you will run. So you run an XML file, run a XML file. You don't run the real classes. Always it's about running XML file, and most of the time that XML file will be testng.xml. So most of the time that XML will be named as TestNG. This is called the configuration file. Okay, all right. So you write your classes and annotate them You then create an XML file. Okay, you then create an XML file and tell inside the XML file what you want to run. When you create 100 classes, you don't really run 100 classes. You might run only one class, 2 class at a time. So tell your XML, what in XML you are configuring what you want to run. Then you run the XML file, and most of the time it is testng.xml. Okay. Before that, let's see what are the annotations. In JUnit we have setup, and then test method, then tear down. Am I right? So setup will always run one time for each test method inside the class. We know that tear down will run each time for every test method after the test method. Okay, but in TestNG we have a lot more options. First one is, remember, first there is a test, means test method. Okay, and I say test, it's test method, one test case. Then there will be groups. Then there will be classes. A class contains methods, and all the methods can go to one group or two or three groups. You can create groups. So methods, test method can belong to groups, and a test method belongs to a class, and it can belongs to suite. Okay, suite. So these are the things. So test method, a test group, a test class, a test suite. So this is very important. In JUnit we only have test and suite, class and suite, but in TestNG we have groups. So that's why in, let me write this actually. Yeah, I will write a simple JUnit another method. Okay, sorry, TestNG method. Let's see. I am writing another method. So now I will say class, and I will say test2. Okay, and I will say import org dot testng dot annotations dot star, and then I will say import org dot testng dot star, and also import, or let's say java dot util dot star. I want to use a collection class and print it what it means to you. Let's say I want to create a, I will show you. Yeah, anything with the test represents a test method. Agree? If you see here, and I can use here or import org dot testng dot junit dot star. Okay, I can have junit inside this one. I created a variable, private variable called collection. It's a type of collection. And if you see here, what is happening here? Didn't I? Dot star. One second, something is wrong. I have to make this org dot junit dot, okay, junit dot star. Okay. Okay, hold on. TestNG dot annotations dot star. Why is this annotation not working? Okay, hold on. Okay, if you see, I have fixed my errors. Nothing. If you see this one, at the rate before class, at the rate after class, at the rate before method, at the rate before method, at the rate after method, and test. Okay, if I run this one, let me run this one. If you see here how it runs, so it is running again some XML, some temporary XML which is created in my temporary folder. Forget it. So first, if you see, at the rate before class runs first time, then at the rate before runs, then a test runs, then at the rate after runs. Okay, then again at the rate before runs, and another test run. See, I have two tests in my TestNG. See, it is checking for a empty collection and it is checking for one item collection. Okay, I'm just doing a simple test. All right. So when I'm running this one, yeah. So yes. Okay. A test method will be there, and a class one time it will run, and after class one time, and at the rate before, at the rate after. Okay, and there is only one method it is running here. There is only one method it is running, but there is another second method too. Yes, one item, but where is the second method? It is not running the second method. It is not running the second method. All right. Okay, let me see that again. Yeah. So how will it run? So this is the structure in test JUnit 3. So this is the structure. Let's see. This is the structure in JUnit 3. So in TestNG, it will be a test method will run always. Before that, before method will run, and after that, after method will run. Got it? So before every method, a before method will run, and after method will run. And if you have two methods, at the rate before class will only run for one class at a time, and at the rate after class will run. After class will run. And it similarly at the rate before group will run for every group only once for the group, only once for the class here, but this is for every method. At the rate before method and at the rate after method are for every method, and at the rate after group, you see this one. And now then there is at the rate before suite, complete suite, before suite, and at the rate after suite. Do you see this one? Okay, so let me write this way. Let me write the same thing. For example, let me run this one. Okay, I will write this nicely for you. Okay, if I have public void test1, okay, system.out.println test1, this is test2, okay, and how to make it a test method in TestNG? This one at the rate test, okay. So now I want to do this is at the rate before method, okay. See, these are all annotations. Remember, these are all annotations, okay. And I will do at the rate after method, okay. Got it? And let's do only class now. Hold on, actually this is 1, 2. You cannot have a method name like that. T1, let's say T2, and similarly I want to do at the rate of before class and after class, okay. Class, okay, class, and let's see at the rate after class, and let's say T3, this is T4, and let's do this way, okay. So how many do you have? At the rate before class, at the rate after class, at the rate before method. So there are two methods. So at the rate before method will run before every method. At the rate after method will run after every method. So there are two methods. So it will run two times. But at the rate before class will only run before one class at a time. So there is only one class. So I will run this one class. Okay. Yeah. If you see here, yeah. At the rate before class only run one time. Then before method test1, after method. Then before method test2, after method, and after class. Do you see that? Here I don't have groups or suites. So how? That's why I'm not writing groups or suites. So but there is at the rate before groups and at the rate before suites, and similarly at the rate after groups and at the rate after suites. Okay. Yeah. So this is about classes. And see, actually there is one method here. There is one method here. In TestNG, there is another nice thing, as I told, other than annotations, there is something called configurations XML files. Let's see. That is called suites. So you don't write suites in code. Suites are not created in code in TestNG. So where are they created? They are created in XML files. How do you create them? So it's unlike JUnit. So how do you do that? Let's see. I will go and say right click and I will just say instead of that I will create, actually go and say new file, and let's say testng.xml. you see, I'm just creating a new file, testng.xml. so there is nothing in here, so how will I make a suite? Let's see. I will show you, one second. Do you see this one? I'm writing a suite, actually. So I'll say my TestNG. So let's do this way. Go and find in like somewhere. For example, if you see any TestNG something, see from testng.xml, do you see like go and find an XML, TestNG XML, easily to find. See, do you see this one? A test is defined like this. You have to do nothing but write a test like this, but I would like to have this TestNG DTD data type means data definition document. Okay, then write a test like this, forget about this one. Okay, forget about this one. See, when I'm running from here, I am only running this test2. If I'm running from here, I'm only running test1. So I am not really doing test. If I want to run from both, I cannot really do that unless I create a suite. But I am now created a testng.xml, and I said that test, I will see, always create, first thing is write a documentation type and say that the DTD. Okay, and then write a test. Okay, do you see this? In this test, what are the classes you want to run? Classes. Do you see these classes? Which classes you want to run? Then go and find a name, like give the class, and give the class, for example, I want to, what is this class? This is com.wbqa.test1. I want to run this one, and I want to run what? Test2. Okay, test2. So I want to run both the classes. That's how I want to do it. Do you see that? And always test should have a name. Let's say my unit testing regression 1. Let's say I'm doing regression testing. Okay, one. Okay, version 1. Alright, now I did this one, and you want to run this one. Until now you were running really classes. This is one class, this is one class. But now I want to run this XML file. How would I do that? Right click it, go to run as, and go to run configuration. Do you see this one? Run configuration. Run as, run configuration. And once you get there, you see this TestNG. Go to TestNG, this one. Okay, TestNG, go and click on this one, TestNG or something, See, do you see this one? I don't want to run a class. Remove this one. I don't want to run. Go and say suite. I want to find a suite. Okay. Alright. Let's do one thing. Where is this file? Okay. Now, let's do suite. And the name is, again, you should have a name. For suite also you should have name. Let's say, what is this one? My current suite. Okay, all right. Now run as, and see TestNG suite. Automatically it came as TestNG suite. Yes, it is a TestNG suite. So I created a suite. If I go here and if I go browse, see it is telling me WKA this one. Yes, I want this one. Or actually this one. This is the same as that one, because when you build that will go into bin folder. I don't want to run individual classes now. See, until now I told what to run. Now I'm putting what to run into XML file and I'm telling it to run XML file. So from now everything will be run from XML file. So I'm configuring. So when I'm running this one, see it is a suite. So I'm running the XML file suite. Do you see this one? So it is running this here now. Until now it was running a temporary XML file, but from now it is running this testng.xml here. And if you see here, it is running test1 and it is running test2. Okay, and total test run is 3. Where is the first one? What is the, and it is running this one also. Do you see this one, my test also? This is my first TestNG. Okay, if you go here, where is this run? Where is this run? Okay, yeah, run configuration, and let's say again run as, go to run as TestNG suite. That's it. See, it is running 3 tests, and this one test from, this is the first test. First test from where? This is running the first test from here and 2 tests from here. So it is running the both classes at one time. So tomorrow if you don't want, see, you build the code, you build this jar file, right? You build this code and you make a jar file of this one. And but XML file you can change it every time. I don't want this one, so I will comment this one. For example, I can select this one. I only want to run now test 2. Let's say I only want to run test 2. So now I comment the first one and I will run test 2. So now only 2 tests will run. So this way I have flexibility of running. Even though I can make one code, I don't have to change code when I want to run something. Running is static. So you don't need to change objects of compile time when you need to run something. So this way it is more flexible. So I am determining this configuration to how to run this. So this way in TestNG, it's not only about code. You need to learn about annotations and you need to learn about configuration. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll do more. So this is the flexibility JUnit gives us. For example, again, let me see. If I remove these comments, so these are HTML comments. I hope everyone knows this XML comments. So this is a simple XML file. And all you need to tell is this, the definition of this document is at here from TestNG definition, and you have to write your suite and test, and you have to what are the classes. For example, tomorrow if I don't write anything in this one, and if I'm running, there are no tests to run, and all I need to do is run as, and again TestNG, but there are no methods. If you see here, there are no methods run. There are no methods to run. See, no test suite found and nothing to run. So whatever you put, it will run here. Now I will do something. Here I am saying that only run test2. Do you see this one? Test2. So what I can do is, okay, what I can do more is this. You see here, these are the annotations, the basic annotations. At the rate test determines a test method as a test, or you can put this at the class level also. Okay, and before suite, after suite, before test, after test, before groups, after groups, before class, after class, before method, after method. And on a test you can still have this kind of like groups and everything. Let me do something. For example, I want to group my methods. For example, this is like groups is equal to, and I will say this is positive testing, positive group. Groups are nothing but the things which you try to give names. You are grouping your tests. So this I will say negative, negative, negative. Okay, you see here. So I made this as a group. This test belongs to group positive. This test belongs to group negative. Now I go here and I will say, see, I am asking it to run the class test2, and I can say groups groups. Okay, and I will say include. Okay, okay, and I will say name is equal to what? Let's say positive. Okay, so I'm asking it to run. Okay, how will I do that? Groups. Actually, I should put this in a run, and I will take this as a run, and I will put this one. Okay, all right, and name. Yeah. Okay. Alright, so I am asking it to run only positive test cases. Do you see that? And I will say run as, and again run configuration and suite and run. Nothing to run. Hold on. Duplicate testing. Include name equal to positive. Groups positive. Okay. Run as, run configuration. No, there is something wrong here. Okay. Give me 1 second. I will do that. Yeah, so it should write like this one, and let's say this is negative, and only one of this one, and this one is positive. Okay, positive. Okay, and if I run this one, I'm only running positive. And if you go and see, no suite found, nothing to run. What is this one? Alright, let me take these groups away. Okay, and run as, run configuration. There is something really wrong here. So if you see this again, even though this test contains two methods, I am only asking it to include positive groups. Do you see this positive group? Only I am asking it to include positive groups. So it will only run the positive test cases. So this way, I am only running whatever I want. And I can say, or instead of this one, exclude positive. Or let's say, include this one. Or you can use exclude plus positive. Okay. Okay, it ran the other one. It ran the test 2. Test 1 is positive, test 2. So you can use include, and also you can use like POS dot star, means run anything which starts with POS. So you can use wildcards in this one. So this is very flexible. Remember, this configuration is very flexible. So now you understand why we name your tests as a groups. Now again, similarly, we can have, let's say, at the rate before group, you see this group, and I can have at the rate before group. Hold on, before groups, not group. I am sorry about that. Okay, so similarly you can have at the rate before suite, right? Before, at the rate before suite. Do you see that? Okay, you can have before. So before suite, before group, before class, before method. So groups can be mentioned here, whatever the group you are running. So you can have groups, and one thing can belong to two groups. How will you do that? So think like this belongs to negative testing also. So there is only one test case in positive group, but there are two test cases in negative groups. So groups are very important for TestNG. Alright. So that is one thing. How do you do negative testing in TestNG? Remember in JUnit, how did you do your negative testing? For example, if I want to look at a TestNG test, if you go and see how did you do a negative testing. For example, if you are looking for an empty array, how did you do that? You did this one, and if it is exception, it is true. Otherwise, you made it false. So, but exception testing is very easy in JUnit. How is that? Let's see. Let's go back to JUnit and let's say new class, and I will say test3. Okay, and I will say import org.testng not annotations dot star. So now I am looking for something. For example, I will write a small testng exception class. Okay, see here, I think like I am expecting an exception. For example, here when I do division by 0, what will I get? I will get arithmetic exception. So I will say expected exceptions. Do you see this one? Is equal to arithmetic exception dot class. That's it, done. So I am telling that if this exception happens, this test is passed, otherwise no. So expected exceptions tells that what is the exception you are expecting from this test thing. So that's why you have to learn some properties on the TestNG. See, these are the properties on test. Like you can have groups, you can have expected exceptions, you can have enabled, you can have a timeout, you can have a thread pool size, you can have a priority, you can have a invocation timeout. So depends on methods, depends on groups. So this kind of stuff. Okay, so at the rate test you can say that expected exception. So if this exception happens only, so let me run this. If I run this, it will only run if you see past division with exception, and if you see here test is 1. Okay, time taken and everything. Okay, next see, if you want to run something, if you want to ignore, for example, I don't want this test to be run now. I don't want this test to be run. Like for example, I just, even though I write the test thing, I don't want it to run. Like let's say test 4, and I don't want it to run. How will I do that? Import org.testng dot annotations dot star, and I will say public void my test. Okay, and like say system dot out dot println. Okay, let's say this won't appear. Okay, I will say at the rate test. So when I say, and when I run, this will appear, means this test is running by default. This test is running and it is appearing. I don't want this test to run. So what will I do? Enabled is equal to false. Do you see this one? Properties. So when I run this one, it won't run. Do you see? Nothing is run. Test run 0. It won't run. Even though you ask it to run, it won't run. So I can say that I can ignore test cases to run. So this is enabled equal to false. And the next thing is performance testing. For example, I want something to test 5. Let's say I want something to org.testng.annotations.star. Okay, let's say public void my test. Okay, like let's say system.out.println, and I will say timeout test. Okay, I can say at the rate test and timeout equal to 1000 milliseconds. This should execute within 1000 milliseconds. If it is not executing within 1000 milliseconds, make it fail. Do you see this one? Do you see this one? Past. Like for example, if I write a for loop int I I is less than 100, I plus plus, and this should execute in how many times? Within I equal to 0. So this should execute within 1000 milliseconds. Will this? May not be. Well, is this passed? Let's see. Just run failed. Okay. Let's say this one to 1000 times. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. And I'm asking it to 1000 times, and let's say on 100 milliseconds. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. It should have. No, it didn't fail at all. Like, let's say 10 milliseconds. Did it pass? Don't tell me it passed. Holy. It's very. It's passed. Okay. Whatever. Right. So, okay. So this timeout will tell the program can timeout within this time. Alright. Or I can say like thread.sleep and wait for this program for sleep, and let's say 10,000 or something like that, and this test will fail. See, failed because it's timed out. And actually there is another exception. Actually, import java.lang, actually java.lang.star. Okay. Yeah, anyway it will fail, so we know that failed because thread timed out exception. Okay, so we can do performance testing using this one. Another good thing about JUnit is, say for example I have my test 1 and my test 2, and I will say this is think like this one. I can say depends on methods. Do you see this one? And I will say my test 1 means run my test 1 before. You see this one? So before running my test 2 you should run my test 1. Otherwise you shouldn't run my test 1. Like for example, as I said before, login should appear before doing anything. Run the login test before running this test. So depends on methods. Okay. Something went wrong here. Okay, it's depending on a method public test 1 which is not annotated with test what? I did. Is it not? I did, right? It's the test. It's saying I didn't annotate it with test. Yeah, now it see, now it is appearing. It was not saved before. Okay. So see, even though if I run, for example, I will go and say I only want test 4, and I only want methods. For example, I can say method, for example, let's say class, and let's say class. So, and I want to only run method. What is the method? Methods, and I only want method. Okay. Yeah, like let's say include, only include name is equal to, what is that? Let's say name. What do you want to do? In test 4, what is the method you want to run? Only my test 2. I only want to run my test 2, but my test 2 is dependent on what? My test 1. Okay, so let's remove these groups. I don't want these groups. Okay, see, I only want to run my test 2, but my test 2 is dependent on my test 1, so automatically it will run. Whatever you do, it automatically will run. Come on. Okay. Okay. What is depending on which is not annotated test? I did annotate as a test. Why are you doing this? Okay, run as did annotate it as a test. Why is this doing this one? Okay. Okay. I did annotate it as a test. Alright, so that's how you can do like dependency testing. And there is one more thing I want to tell in this one. You can also say, you see this one, always run true. You can say always run equal to false, so you don't want it to run. Another thing, invocation count. How many times you want it to be invocated? Like for example, 5 times, 10 times. So it gets invoked like performance testing, parallel testing. And also you can have thread pool size. Do you see this thread pool size? How many threads you want? The pool size, what is this one? So invocation count is about parallel testing. If you say invocation timeout invocation, so run this method 5 times parallelly, so you can do parallel testing. You can do parallel testing timeout. So this is very important. Depend on groups, depend on methods, and always if you are a good tester, please write your description. Description is nothing but this is my test 1. It's nice description. When you run this one, it gives you see this one, this gives you, see, description which one passed. So this way it is more readable. Your reports, logs are more readable. Okay, and if you see ignore missing dependencies, invocation count, and priority, you can always tell priority 5, 4, 2, 1. You know, you can give priorities. Okay, and what else? Okay, and sequential, single threaded or multiple threaded, and expected success percentage. For example, I expect the success percentage to be 90. So if I run this 5 times or 10 times, if the success percentage is not 90, the test will fail. So this is all about performance testing. So you can do all the performance testing here only, and test name, suite name, everything. So these tags are more important. Okay. So these are the this is the some of the functionality which TestNG gives. Let's see different kind of parameterization. Before that, I want to remove everything here. I don't want to tell which one I am running. Okay, so this is just a plain XML. You know this. I will create a new class, and I will say this is test 6. Okay, and I will close the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, and I will say public void my parameter test, and I will say int number. Let's say actually think like tomorrow we are doing a Selenium test login test, and let's say string username. So you are passing a username, and you will print this username system.out.println, and so if you see here, I want my test username to be passed. Okay, this is my test, and I will say my test as test. Agreed. But I want to pass parameters, so that's why JUnit gave me parameter tag, parameters. Do you see this one? And it will say value is equal to number username. Do you see this one? Case sensitive. This is this one. This is how I write it, right? You know, I am not good with syntax, so don't expect when I write something that is perfect. Honest. Value is equal to username. Yes, I did. Why? Because again, I didn't import the package. Import org.testng.annotations.star. Okay, that's it. So where will this username get supplied? Let's see. I'm writing this TestNG class, and I will say classes, and class name is equal to, what is the class I want to run? com.web dot this one dot what is that, test 6. Okay, I want to run this one, but this needs a parameters, right? This needs a parameters to be passed. So how will I pass the parameter? So how will I pass the parameter is, I will say a parameter tag. See here, parameter, and what is the name of the parameter? Username. And what is the value I want to pass? For example, SAMPUV. You see that? So I'm passing parameter from this XML into that file. So let's run this configuration. Come on. Yeah. And always remove this one. Don't use this one. You see this one? And let's see if it printed. Do you see this one? It printed because I wrote system dot. So you can pass parameters using the parameters tags from this configuration file into, so you can separate data from. This is data driven testing. I hope everyone agrees with me. This is nothing but, this is nothing but data driven testing. Data driven testing. But remember, most of the time, 90% of the time we pass simple strings, integers, numbers, characters and stuff. But sometimes we need to pass huge objects like employees, accounts and stuff. How would you do that? So for any value types, if you are passing like strings, like numbers, decimals or booleans or integers or anything, use this way. This is the most perfect way. If you are really dealing with complex kind of parameterization, then you need to do other kinds of stuff. So that is called using data providers. So let's see how do you do using data providers. So let's say test 7, and I will write this using import org.testng.annotations.star, and let's say first I will write a method public. Remember, always return object arrays or object multidimensional arrays. Okay, like my data driver, my data setup. Let's say I will write this one, my data setup, and I will say return new string array which will contain names, like let's say 2 names. What do you say? Let's say my name, first name and my last name. Okay, got it? And I have to say this one @data provider. Do you see this data provider? And you have to give a name for this one. Let's say my data provider. Okay, all right. Okay, now think like my test I will write this as public void. My test needs something, let's say string user. Let's say, actually let me see the example, I missed it. Yeah, string array names. Okay, let's say it is printing system.out.println, and I'll say names of 0 plus and use space and plus names of 1. Okay, and I have this one. I will say this is a test, so this is an annotation. Test means that is a test, and use data provider. Yes, data provider. Yes, actually not like this. This is not a data provider. This is using a data provider. So use data provider, what? Same name, equal to this one. So please use this data provider to set up these names. Got it? So let's run this test, and let's see really if the names got into the test. Why? Yeah, it should be object array. It should return object array and use array of use object array of let's do return new object array. This is the way how JUnit does it, so don't get confused. Hold on. My name string my name. Okay, and let's see. Let's print this. Okay, passes the responsible the method text1. Yeah, how would you do that? Is the data provider is trying to pass two methods. You have to use the other one too. Okay, let's say okay, names1, names2. Okay, let's say use names. Okay, if you see here, still failed. Argument type mismatch. Yeah, argument type mismatch. So it is calling the method for 2 times. Oh yeah. Hold on. New object array. Okay, hold on. Okay, let me do this way. I will fix this. Start recording. For example, think like you want to run a test. For example, you want to write a login test. Login test. And you want to do this for login details. You see this one, login details string, and login details, one is the username and the 0 is the username and 1 is the login details. 0 is the username and login. Think like you want to test for a whole 10 logins at a time. For example, this is my login ID and this is my password, and for example someone else logins like Mercury, and for example Mercury again. So you want to do it for all lot of like 10 usernames at one time. Again I will do comma, like some other ID, again comma, some other ID, comma, some other ID. So like I want to test this login scenario for 10 logins, like 1 2 let's say login 1, let's say username 1 and password 1, let's say password 1. Okay, so similarly username 2, username 3, so password 2, and password 3. Okay, so how many logins? 1 to 5 logins. I want to test it for one time. At one go, I want to test this for 5 logins. So I will do data provider. I will create a data provider and I will say that this is my data provider. I am telling the test to use this data provider. So what does it give? New string array, right? New string array this way, and I take it this from this one. Okay, let's try this one. And if you see, this test already run for 5 logins, and first one passed, second one passed, third one passed, fourth one passed. So you can run tests with data provider. Gives you way to run tests with multiple data and multiple times at one go. Okay, before when I used parameters, it only one time, one parameter one at a time, but this is like multiple data sets at one time. It just, you can do for different kinds of tests, like most of the time test cases differs from data. So I can do multiple test cases, like for example empty. So I don't want empty, like invalid login, empty login, valid login. So you can do all the kinds of test cases at one go. So this is more powerful. Am I right? So this is like using data provider. Okay. So that is one way of using data provider. And I already taught depends on methods and it depends on groups too. There is actually one more thing I want to mention in TestNG. Sometimes it is not plain simple objects. You have to create employee objects. For example, think like similarly same thing. Let's say employee test. Okay. Let's say employee test. Here instead of this one, you need an employee, maybe employee. So you have to create employees in the data provider. Okay. But if the employee doesn't have a constructor, then you have to use factories. Actually, I am not going to tell what is a factory now, but please read at the factory also. This is another way of data setup when the data is business objects like employee, and where employee class does not have default constructor. Okay, this is very important. People will ask you at the rate what is the factory. Okay, I will put this in this document. Okay, all right. So 3 ways to parameterize our tests in TestNG. What are those? Let me write this. Using parameter from testng.xml and using data provider and using factory. Okay, I didn't explain factory, but you can read it. Okay, so these are the 3 ways to read it. And one more thing, every time when you run, for example, if I am running this run configuration, and if I run this feed, if something failed, think like if something failed, automatically it will create, let's say test failed, some test failed, think like some test failed. Automatically it will create a file called TestNG failure.xml, which will contain same file like this, which will only contain methods which failed. Why? For example, think like you ran 100 methods. Only 2 of them failed. How do you know? Go and find this XML and you can see this is the same like a TestNG. Now run this XML instead of this XML. So it will run only these 2 methods. So failed methods can be detected easily and rerun easily using TestNG failure.xml. Okay, So this way it is more organized TestNG. So when you run this, like 100 methods are there, it will pick the methods which failed and it will create another XML ready for you to run again the failed methods. Am I making any sense, guys? Okay. So that is one thing I want to mention. That is good. And parallel testing, rerunning failed, and dependency injection also. Most of the Java coding nowadays is done using dependency framework. I explained that actually in JNet something. Dependency injection means everything is written by using dependencies are not hard coded. Only interfaces are put, so any type of object can go through a method. So that is generally called dependency injection. Like one method depends on another method using an object, and that is coded using interface. So dependency injection, actually let me show you factories and see. So one is using, see there is a how to create factories. See these factories, read about it. Okay, and you can run parallel testing. See parallel methods, thread count 5. All you need to do is like nothing, parallel. See parallel is equal to true or methods, and then thread count equal to 5. You can do this. So you can run parallel this for 5 times, parallel 5, this suite can be run for 5 times parallelly. And other thing is, hold on, so dependency injection is also one thing. Hold on, yeah, dependency injection. So TestNG supports dependency injection a lot. Okay, dependency injection a lot. Okay, so that is one more thing. Great. Okay, so JNet 4 also has same like TestNG at the rate test at the rate run with at the rate suite at the rate before class at the rate, but doesn't have the an expected equal to arithmetic exception. So ignore parameters is there, at the rate test is there, at the rate suite is there, at the rate before classes, but there are no groups, there are no as many annotations as TestNG. So JUnit is also still there, JUnit 4 is still there, and but not that far. Okay, so we can do sometime with JUnit 4 too, but you can read that because it is similarly. So what is the difference between JUnit 3 and JUnit 4 and TestNG? Test annotation is same. Before suite is not there, after suite is not there, before test is not there, after test is not there, before groups is not there, after group is not there, but before class is there, after class is there, before method is there, after method is there. And ignore is equal to this one, expected equal to this one, timeout is also there. Okay, but it doesn't have still configuration file. It has parameters, but it doesn't have data providers. It doesn't really support this factory methods, factory and stuff. So it is not as extensive as TestNG, but it is think like it's a small part of TestNG. Okay, but JUnit 4 is powerful with something called Hamcrest library. Hamcrest library, for example, in using Hamcrest library, you get assert that. So assert that gives you, see, JUnit 4 is mixing up with the Hamcrest library. So it doesn't give you this groups or anything, but the assertions, see, JUnit is always famous for assertions. So assertions became so powerful in JUnit 4 because of this Hamcrest library. See, for example, if it is equals, we use the assert equals. If it is true, assert true. If it is false, assert false. If it is something like that. But Hamcrest library said, don't use anything, just use assert that. Then put whatever you want and use a matchers. These are called matchers. So for example, you can say assert that this all of any of, so it looks like more of English. Okay, more of English, and at the same time trying to match anything with anything, and it has more matchers. For example, you can have assert equals with ignoring case, assert equals with ignoring white space, assert content string, assert close to, okay, assert greater than, equal to, assert has entry. So it depends on the object. See, logical it has this many, collections it has this many. So depend, these are all this, everything uses assert that, and you can say any of, anything, is, all of, any, not. So this is more powerful. So whenever someone asks you about JUnit 4 mention, you need to mention Hamcrest library. And when someone asks you about TestNG, you need to mention about these configuration files and all this stuff.